to the Insomnicat Show with Nicolette and Brian. We'll get real deep with you, educating, inspiring, and solving problems with some of the most inspirational humans on the planet. Buckle up and come on the journey.
I'm excited. All right, guys, I'm Nicolette, and today Brian and I are here with Mike Evans. He is the founder and CEO of Fixer.com, and he is going to tell us a little bit about his origins as well as what Fixer is up to. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to talk about Fixer, but you originally, you have a long history and you have a pretty cool history. So tell us what you were doing before this.
Yeah, so prior to starting this company, I started another one. It's called GrubHub. And so most people know that that's a food delivery business. I started that in 2002, ran it for about 14 years and then, 13 years. And then after the IPO, a few days after the IPO, I punted it and rode my bicycle across the country. So and so then in more recent years, started thinking about startups again and was really thinking a lot about the disparity of access to trades education from a gender perspective, and also the fact that the supply of skilled workers in the United States is really strapped compared to the demand, and the problem's getting worse. So the company that I created, Fixer, is really about it's a W-2 employee based. So we have employees who go into consumers' homes, to homeowners' homes, and do handy person work. And we train all of them from scratch, and they're employees. They're not contractors. And so that's the new business I've started, and hopefully it'll be bigger than the previous one. But we'll see how things go.
All right, I could really use Fixer right now to work on this house. There are a couple of things I need right now, Mike. So if you can move on from Brooklyn next to
you need
Long
to
Island.
use the level on those shelves behind you. You can tell that they're not parallel. And owning a handy person business, I'm dying a little inside just seeing that. Not to call you out. I mean, you just moved in, but
to be fair,
it looks like
we can't even take responsibility for this.
Actually, Mike, that you're saying that, I don't know if it's not leveled or she has it on the wrong notch. Like you see, it looks like.
Oh yeah, that could be it. Yeah,
that could be it too. I don't know. But it's interesting because there are a lot of other sites where you could actually go and hire or find handy people, but yours are actually employees, which is much different than any of the other models out there.
Right.
Yeah, one of the challenges with the things that exist in the market today is you go online, you spend a lot of energy and effort describing what your problem is, which assumes that you have the language to describe the problem. Right. Which is not, I don't think the majority of people who are new to buying homes even have the language to describe what's wrong. Mm-hmm. And then what you get out of that is you get a longer to-do list. You get a list of 5 people to call on the phone. Mm-hmm. Like you have to call them on the phone is the least used app on our phones. Mm-hmm. Like nobody wants to call anyone anymore. And then you go to voicemail and they might call you back. Right. Yep. And so this is a different kind of experience where the entire thing is integrated. We can have a conversation with you and you're like, yeah, the doohickey on the thing is broken. And we're like, great, we'll be there tomorrow at 10 a.m. A skilled, vetted, trained, friendly, polite, handy person will be there and they'll fix it right away. And it's just a better experience.
So you mentioned that you train them from scratch. How does that training center work? Yeah.
So, before or after the pandemic? Before, we had a 13,000 square foot building in Chicago. And at least here in Chicago, what we would do is we'd bring them into that training center, and it'd be about 3 months of a combination of classwork and lab work. And then they would go and start getting on the job training in a mentorship model. The pandemic shifted most of that to digital with still a component of like the on-site lab stuff, but there's a lot of it that can actually be learned by having a teacher teach you things over Zoom, but you still need to practice it. And so as we've started our expansion nationally, so we're in Dallas now, we're coming to Brooklyn soon. Maybe by the time this podcast is live, we may be in Brooklyn. It's very soon. And so what we do is a lot of that's digital, and then we actually fly the trainer out to that area to do the on-the-job training, which works great because and then over time, we'll open these training centers in each of the new cities that we're in.
Awesome.
Now, what skills, right? What skills are you guys teaching? What skills do some of the people have? Because, a handyman, there's a, a diversity of things they could do around a home, right? So what skills are they primarily that you guys are focused on?
Yeah. So what we're looking for is by the time they finish the first 3 months of the initial training and then the 18 months of the ongoing apprenticeship and mentorship model, we're looking for the people that we hire to have a very broad base of skills, and a reasonable amount of depth in each of those skills. And so need to be able to do a little bit of plumbing, a little bit of electrical, a little bit of carpentry, a little bit of tile work, how to regrout or recaulk different things in bathrooms. We need to be able to hang things on walls. A lot of people want TVs mounted on walls. A lot of doors stick. A lot of toilets won't stop running. So things like that.
Mike, are you in my home? Do you hear my toilet? Is that are you hearing my toilet right now?
If the pandemic has taught me, it's taught me a couple of things. One of the things is toilets need to start when you want them to start, and they need to stop when they're done. And most don't, which is really kind of shocking. But that stuff can be fixed. And so we don't go really deep into, say, electrical. We don't start laying conduit in a new construction or in a remodel. But switching out a light switch, an on-off or a dimmer switch is a pretty typical thing for us to do. Or replacing a light with a fan. Those are kind of the things that you would do with a handy person service. And then the next step is knowing the experts who we can refer customers to that can go deeper for those bigger projects.
Now you're also a certified Nest installer, correct?
Yep.
So was there a process that you needed to go through to make that happen as well?
Yeah, we needed to develop a curriculum to train our folks on how to install those. And there's certain steps. One of the steps is the homeowner has to be there, and they have to have the app on their phone so you can actually see that it's working. Because in a lot of situations, it's part of just the quality control is making sure that the customer is happy with how it works, which you cannot do with Nest unless the person's there actually using their app and logged in. And so it sort of started at the finish, with the process around confirming that the install went well, and then all the things that you have to do to get there. 95% of Nest installs are so simple that it takes virtually no training aside from the verify you got it to work. It's the 5% that are tricky that are really tricky. And so just diving a little bit deeper into the different types of HVAC systems there are, the different types of wires that you might see, for the 95% that are easy, it's fine. The next 4%, we can do them with some thoughtfulness. And then there's like the 1% where you're like, nope, we're not touching that. That's like a 1873 boiler that somebody hooked motor up to and put some wires to a do you have coal down there? What is going on? And in certain situations,
now he's in your house, Brian.
Now you're in my house. I have a house that was built in 1900 with probably a boiler that's probably 20 something years old, but and it's running a Nest actually. So
20 is fine. It's really when you you can get into situations where there's pre 1960 heating systems that have been sort of retrofitted. That's fairly common in Chicago. It's common from what I've seen in the housing stock in Brooklyn. It's common there. In some of the older cities from an American perspective, for us, that's 150 years old, right? Yeah. So 200 years old. And there's just older systems that don't necessarily lend themselves. But generally, just being able to diagnose that and being able to say, yes, we can do this, or this is the limit. Being able to know your limits is actually a really important part of any construction industry company. Go up to this point, but don't go over is it's a valuable tool for ensuring quality.
Now, do you find
a lot of smart home?
Oh, I was about to ask the same exact question. Are you guys doing a lot of smart home installs? Because I know my house, I retrofitted a lot of smart home devices in a house that's 121 years old.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's easier now than it was even 10 years ago with the Nest, the Google products, it's quite easy. With the Simply Safe products, that's easy as well. because a lot of them don't even require wiring. A lot of them are battery operated and Wi-Fi operated. And so those are super simple to install for people. But we do also wired systems.
Now, do you find yourself with some of the smart home stuff, you wind up not just doing the installation, but almost like IT tech help support, like people who don't know how to use the devices and they're calling you guys up and being like, my Nest doesn't work. And you're like, maybe you're not logged into your app. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's our goal to be the first call that people make when something goes wrong. And so, we have a subscription product where you have a dedicated fixer who comes every month to your home. And that relationship develops over time, and they do end up being sort of the help desk for the whole home, not just the digital systems. And we like that. We embrace that because it can be so intimidating going from not owning a home. Like when you're renting, you've got like a landlord or a super who does everything for you. Then you end up in your own home, and suddenly you're like, oh, I have to just know all of this stuff magically. And maybe 50 years ago that was fine, but these days people are more comfortable with specializing. They're more comfortable with the idea that somebody else cooks my food and delivers it, or somebody else does my shopping for me, or somebody else does my driving for me. Like that, we have a more specialized sort of labor society than we used to, and there's no stigma associated with having somebody who has the expertise come into your home and do it. And so we've tried to make that easy. That it's.
I can't wait till you guys are in my neighborhood.
That's what I said. I was like, I could really
next
use the
Tuesday.
help.
So we're like almost there, So not quite, a little bit longer than that, but yeah.
Oh man, because
no, is there an app for Fixer as well?
Yeah, you can go to fixer.com. We actually just use text messaging because we found most people would prefer to just do that than
seriously.
Yeah,
I love Fixer. I'm loving Fixer more and more every minute.
Yeah, you can just text us at FIXER. We even got the short code. So.
Oh my goodness. So now, where do you see? I mean, you're coming from GrubHub, coming here now to Fixer and watching how simple technology like text messaging is changing the way people do things. I mean, what is your vision, not only for Fixer.com, but for any sort of task? Like, where do you see technology taking us?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that can make a handy person that you can use technology for to make a handy person service better. Obviously the communication on the front end, communication on the back end. If you move things from phone, which most people under 45 don't want to use anyway, to text messaging, then you have a record of the conversation, which is helpful. It's helpful to be able to review that over a long time. And so the communication gets better, standards get better. Our fixers have the ability to ask each other questions through their app when they run into something that they haven't seen before, because somebody on the team has seen it. And so, and then scheduling is a lot easier with technology. We actually show up when we say we're going to show up. We don't do like the Comcast 8-hour window thing, right? Like we show up on time. Sorry, I forgot to turn off my notifications. I should have done that. Hold on a second.
We'll be there between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m.
Yes. Yeah. And so we don't do that. We show up on time, at a time. And a lot of that's powered by technology and thoughtful processes and backed up by technology. And where I think it's headed, and then obviously the training, being able to do a portion of it digitally, being able to do the classroom stuff remotely, as opposed to the lab oriented things where you're practicing, which really does need to be in a physical space.
Right.
It allows us to train people more quickly and more effectively. And so the goal of this startup is to reboot trade education in the United States, to create an entry path into the trades that anyone can access, regardless of gender, regardless of race. You don't have to have an uncle who taught you how to do this, right? And so, our goal is to get to the point where we're training over 10,000 people a year to enter into the trades on a national scale.
Awesome.
So now, how does someone go and if someone's in one of the areas you have Fixer, they go to Fixer and they apply? Like, where do they apply to become a technician for Fixer?
Yeah, it's just our website, fixer.com. We have on the team, there's like a little team link in it, and that's right now we have positions open in Chicago and Dallas, and soon to be Brooklyn, and then probably DC and Atlanta later this year as well. And so it will be in all the major cities and within the next few years. And there's both experienced tradespeople. There's a path for that, and then there's no experience but aptitude. We're really hiring for integrity and respect and work ethic. And then we can train you the skills, right? We can't train you honesty, right? Like if your mama didn't teach you honesty, we can't, but we can train skills all day long. And so, and so you just go to people just go to the website and apply and we start the process there.
No, I mean, obviously any startup comes with its challenges, right? I mean, I'm bringing this all together. I mean, no.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I mean, would you say, what did you encounter? Did you encounter anything that was kind of like unforeseen in this space where you're coming from, food delivery? Now you're in a whole different industry. Was there anything kind of unforeseen that maybe you had to navigate in the beginning?
One thing that was really different was the effect of weather on business. So at GrubHub, at the previous business, a snowy, sleety, nasty night, business went through the roof. Yeah. Right here when you're doing work sometimes outside, business tanks, right? When you have a bad weather. So I mean, it's fairly obvious in retrospect, but I just didn't expect it going in. So that was one thing. And then I think another thing that's been interesting is that you can train somebody to say, hang a TV on a wall. It only takes a few days to train somebody how to do that in a typical drywall, but it might take 10 years before a person has seen every single type of wall and every crazy set of like studs behind the wall or no studs or concrete or crumbling mortar that you have to drill into, whatever. Yeah. And so just seeing the broad variety of different things that can happen in homes, it really does take years. It's sort of like, it takes days to get to like a basic competency. Right. It takes years to get to mastery of a lot of these skills. And so there's really no substitute for just getting reps. And so we've had to be thoughtful about that. How do you get reps in customers' homes, but still guarantee quality? Right. And there's easy enough ways to do that, before and after photos and quality assurance controls and things like that. And so I think that surprised me, just both how easy and how hard it is to train people on things. Very easy to get to start, very hard to get to mastery. And so that's been most of the last 4 years I've been thinking about that problem. This idea of competency versus fluency versus mastery, and like how you bring somebody along through those steps.
Right. Now, is it different because GrubHub, you're 1099ers, right? It's all, people doing it in their spare time, where this is people doing it full time with regular work hours. So was there a lot of differences in the way you transition the employees, or sort of what you need in the employees between, someone who's doing it, here and there?
So first of all, just to be clear, the 1099 employee driver network that GrubHub launched was after I had left. And I'm very much not a fan of the gig economy from a career progression perspective. It's great if it's a side hustle and you got to make some extra cash. But if it ends up being a 40-hour-a-week job, there's no sense of economic progression or skills progression. And I have major issues with that. So just to be clear.
No. We can even talk about that.
Yeah. And then this company is an answer to that. This company is a career progression, W-2 employee oriented, good job company. And it's very much a response to the Frankenstein's monster that I created previously. Because it's one thing to just say that's not the way to do things and sort of take a shot from the cheap seats. It's another thing to say, okay, well then I'm going to actually create an alternative. Right. So that's what I'm trying to do with the second time around. It's very different. I mean, W-2 employees. Well, first of all, people have been hiring people for 3,000, 4,000 years. So this is like not a new concept. It's just the gig economy is sort of a fad for a little while. But we're training a lot of skills. So retention and satisfaction for the employees is actually really important, because we invest so much in them that if we train them for a year and a half and then they just go work somewhere else, they're kind of like, well, that stinks. We just put all this money into this and all this time into this person's skill set. And if it's a better job, good for them. I love that. But we keep people not through contractual elements, but by creating really good jobs that people want to be at. Right. Which is just a different approach than sort of the disposable nature of the gig economy.
Right.
I agree. So if I want to get something fixed in Dallas, or where are you? You're in Dallas and you're coming to Brooklyn.
Yep.
Chicago.
In Chicago, of course. You're in Chicago. So where do I go? I just go to fixer.com, put in my problem, and I can start texting. How does that work?
That's it. You go to fixer.com, and if you want to put in your problem, you can. Otherwise, you can just schedule a time and you can tell us when we show up, whatever you prefer. We show up ready to all sorts of things. But the whole philosophy is we don't require the customer to do any work before we step in the door. And so the idea that you can start to decrease your anxiety by knowing somebody's coming who can help.
Yes.
That's really what we're going for in that first moment. Yes, you just go to fixer.com or you just text us at FIXER. And we start the conversation, schedule a time, and show up.
So you don't even have to go to the website, guys. That's really cool. Just shoot us a text. Wow.
I got one more question. Do you have people that they just schedule something, you don't know what it is, blind, and they're like, can you fix my toilet? Can you hang this TV? Like there's like 30 things when you get to the house.
Yep. And that's kind of our ideal customer, actually. We get before pictures from maybe half of our customers because when someone texts us after the schedule, usually we'll ask them, hey, if you have any photos, you know, we can show up a little bit more prepared. But it's also fine to show up totally unprepared because we already have this training, and almost every job ends up requiring a trip to Home Depot or Ace Hardware anyway. And so it's very, very hard to sort of divine from the ether, like what materials you'll need on a job. And so usually we show up with the expectation we're going to go shopping anyway. And so it's not a big deal if we show up and it's this and that and the other. And while you're here and yeah, I mean, that's kind of how the job goes.
And now you also have a program, a program where you kind of can keep like a maintenance program, correct?
Yeah. So we call it Care and Protect, and it's just an ongoing, taking the anxiety and worry out of owning your home. And so what happens is we go in and we start by saying what's on your mind. And then usually that conversation is like an hour long. And then we're like, okay, now that you've gotten off your chest, I noticed these 14 things that you may want to do annually, and we can get those on a schedule and we'll start taking care of those things. You know, it's interesting because everybody feels a little embarrassed to have a handy person come into their home and to change a light bulb, right? You feel like you should be able to do that yourself. But once you have a subscription service where we're coming every month anyway, the whole like, could you change any light bulbs that are out? Is just part of what we do.
Right.
And so there's this interesting idea that when it's scheduled and regular and people are comfortable with it, the stigma associated with doing some of those things goes away. And so a lot of the homes we end up doing, swapping all the light bulbs out for LED lights. And, you know, that's been a more recent thing in the last year or two. But yeah, I mean, this idea that like this regular, steady heartbeat, it just takes a lot of the stress out of owning a home.
Yeah. And time. Because I mean, you talked about running to Home Depot. I remember like when I bought my first house, there were times where I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I wound up going to Home Depot 4 times because I didn't know all the things I needed, you know, before I walked in, you know.
There's something about Home Depot too, where you walk in and after 20 minutes, you're in a daze and you can't remember why you were there. And you're just sort of like wandering the aisles like a zombie. We literally, one of the things we train is how to shop in Home Depot. And it's like, you have your list and you go in laser focused. Don't get distracted. Don't get distracted by all the pretty tools. You take everybody to
like a mock Home Depot and you're like, all right, guys, here's your list.
Yeah, it's like
that's why they had a
Bravo reality TV show, right? Where they're like, race to your drills or whatever. Yeah.
I know. I do that. I'm like, oh, look, there's a new chop saw. Let me check it out. Home Depot.
Keep the blinders on. Get to the fastener aisle.
You just solved
Grab
my
box
problem.
of screws.
Right? You just solved my problem right there.
Yeah, it's a real issue.
Oh, well, Mike, thank you so much. This is really, really cool, and I love the way that you're integrating more modern, modern techniques like text messaging, right? I mean, and just something so simple, and really implementing technology to make it all happen. And what are you going to say, Brian? You look like you're.
No.
You look like you're about to say something.
I actually think the subscription program is actually really cool because here's the thing: once you own a house, you know, Nicolette and I were talking about this the other day. You're always fixing something. You are always fixing something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mike, and everybody, go to fixer.com or text FIXER to get in touch and get started in Dallas, Chicago, and soon Brooklyn.
Yep.
All right. Well, is there
Thanks a
anything
lot,
else you want to
Nicola and
leave us
Brian.
with today, Mike?
What's that?
Anything else you want to leave us with today?
No, I mean, I think it's just exciting to be part of. It's exciting to be part of a solution from a training and employment perspective in terms of creating these good jobs, and it's exciting to be part of creating something that homeowners really need and want. And it's just, I don't know, it's been exciting to sort of put those two things together and create value for both sides.
Thanks again, Mike. We appreciate your time.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a good one.